Welcome, everyone, to Nozzle Reaction. This is Andy Prisco with my fire brother, Matt Van Giesen. Hi, Matt.
Hey, Andy, how's it going?
Good. It's been a little while since our last session together, but we've been talking, back and forth a good deal, and you've been coming to our Wednesday sessions at Jumpstart Mastery, which has been such a delight to have you there and have your contributions. And
Yeah, thank you. It's an awesome place to be.
yeah, there's a lot of personal growth happening there across a lot of domains. And for our fire family, I would encourage people, shameless plug, I would encourage people to come by Jumpstart Mastery and check it out. Jumpstartmastery.com. But in keeping with our tradition, let's talk a little bit about our backgrounds. Behind me is a rope rescue exercise we did at when it used to be called Safeco Field in Seattle. A really fun day. I got to be down on the field itself, and we got some great pictures, and we got some great training evolutions in with offsets and a lot of litter packaging and rigging. Was just a lot of fun. And you have a new background, which I absolutely love. Tell us about it.
Thank you. Yeah, so that's basically, for lack of better terms, and that's an I love me wall. So I have a tub. When over the years I've collected a bunch of different memorabilia, pictures, and whatnot. So I threw some of it together, and there it is. And
At the beginning of the last Rambo movie, they start the movie with when he was living in the cave, and he had a whole I love me wall down there in his cave with all the old pictures. And this is like the fire service expression of that to me.
Pretty much. Yeah. So just a few knickknacks, and I'll maybe over time change them out and swap them around to give it a little bit. So yeah, that's really what that is. Some stuff that's some of it's pretty awesome. There's stories behind all of it.
I know it.
some are good stories, some are
and some are not.
Some are not. The axe was from the department I left, and apparently they didn't have an axe to give me, so they went down to the city department and borrowed an axe from them.
They liberated it. Yeah,
they liberated an axe, and then they left the board it's mounted on. They left it unfinished and unpolished because they said that's kind of how I operated, a little bit unfinished and unpolished. And they presented it to me in a parking lot. The interim chief at the time saw me, pulled in, said, "Hey, you're gonna be here a few minutes. I got something for you." I said, "Yeah, I'll wait for you here." And 15 minutes later, drove back into the parking lot, said, "Hey, the guys made this for you," and handed it to me around 2:00 on a weekday afternoon with nobody around.
Only in the fire service. Matt, I don't know why our domain is filled with so many instances of something that could be meaningful ritual completely dismissed in the service of efficiency, like conferring that kind of an item in a parking lot. I'll never forget when I got Firefighter of the Year, the preface that the chief gave at the dinner was, "We essentially ran out of people to give this to. So Andy, come on up." And I was like,
it was your turn.
Yeah.
We had that on a couple occasions. We're going to make you the Firefighter of the Year, Officer of the Year, because I think it's your turn. And nothing devalues the people that went before that actually earned it more than a statement like that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
The axe is still, it's been sitting on a shelf. I pulled it out, hung it on the board because there is some meaning to it. There are some people.
Well, look at the names on the handle. That's where the meaning is.
There's a few I wouldn't mind sanding off, perhaps, but
fair enough.
well, even people that maybe I didn't agree with or get along with, or maybe our values didn't align. Maybe I didn't think their values were that in alignment with what I think the fire service should be. But I impacted them positively in some way, and they felt compelled to sign the act. So I do appreciate that.
Of that, I have no doubt.
Yeah. So and the story behind it, is somewhat true. It's a used axe. It's been beaten around. It saw a lot of service. It did a lot of good. And that does represent me pretty well. So
I'd
I
say
do
so.
appreciate that. And I did work a lot and bridge the gap with the two agencies. So the fact that they got the axe from the neighboring department, yeah, it does have a lot of meaning there too. So
Here, here.
yeah,
Beautiful.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So
So our
the training you were doing, sorry to interrupt, but the training you're
no,
doing there in the picture, was that a multi-agency, paid career, volunteer, everybody
it
mixed together?
it was. I'm a student of the Doug Clark School, so to
Hmm.
speak, in Wenatchee. Doug is um, one of our nation's leading,
Right.
let's say, subject matter experts in rope rescue and rigging, and he has a particular worldview. There are
Sure.
certain knots he prefers, and he's really good at articulating why. And there are certain fundamental principles of rigging that he confers very meaningful math and scientific knowledge in a way that's digestible for a relationship guy like me, as because I'm not a math guy. But when you start lifting heavy weight with rescue line, you have to do some math.
Certainly.
There's some trigonometry.
And
And
his playground's there, don't they use the Alcoa plant down in
he does
Wenatchee a lot? That's
he
their playground,
does.
right?
I've
Yeah.
been there. I've been to Box Canyon. I've been here at Safeco Field. I've been a number of places with him. And um, I have to say that uh, uh, while rope rescue is one of those disciplines where you don't see a tremendous amount of activity using it in real rescues, I I was able to rescue a dog on a bluff based on that training. And what I also learned was how necessary it is to really have a number of people on the fire ground who are trained in that
Right.
discipline. Because if it's just me being safety, being, um, you know, the edge control officer, me doing the rigging,
Very
there's no one
inefficient.
to really, yeah, there's no
Right.
way to corroborate if I make a mistake. I also have to be the person who goes over the edge. So that one rescue revealed our vulnerabilities in our local system pretty quick with the discipline. So I would be the first one to say, as much as I love the craft, if you're really going to do rope rescue, man, that's as perishable as anything else. And more than one or two people on your agency have to know what they're doing,
Right.
because someone could get really hurt. And the good news is that we rescued the dog, and the rigging initially didn't work, and they corrected it while I was over the edge, and then it did work, and um, and we were able to save the day. But like you always say, when the standard is you showed up, if the standard is we rescued the dog, and the manner in which we went about it was potentially, not as safe as it could be, not as effective as it could be, that's a meaningful conversation to have. And very often we don't have those conversations because we rescued the dog.
Right. Yeah, the outcome was positive,
Yeah,
regardless of
right.
the,
As
the
if that
mold in the
sweeps
Swiss cheese
every,
did line up this time.
yeah,
We were
precisely.
fortunate. Our rope rescue program was fairly robust. We had a number of people with overlap, and we were very fortunate to have a federal fire agency nearby that we worked with closely on the high angle rescue stuff and the city department. So combined, we could quite easily. I don't remember a time where we didn't. I never got into the rope rescue. I wasn't a. It just it with the volunteer, you're limited on time,
Yeah.
and the divergence of me moving into a command officer role.
Oh yeah, it
At the
makes it
same
super
time, where I
hard.
would have gone into rope rescue, my path went to incident command and became that
Yeah.
that was where my focus was running. So I was fortunate to have some calls where I was incident command while we did rope rescues, and they went off because I had phenomenal people. I had one call I do remember where the lead on the rope team was upset with me because I called in one of the other agencies And he was upset because he felt we could handle it. And I agree 100%. He was absolutely right. We can handle it. We were handling it, but we were about to make our third descent because dog issue.
Yep.
Dog kept traversing horizontally along the bluff. They had to come up, reset, go down again. And after the second time of doing that, I was concerned with people becoming exhausted. It was 2 a.m, lackadaisical, making a simple mistake. Plus, by having two teams, when we did our third drop, I had another agency do another. So the dog was basically boxed in at that point
Yeah.
and
That
couldn't.
was the right call, Matt. Yeah. That
So,
was
well,
totally the right call.
and then the after action review in the debrief process, when he understood why, he was 100% with it. Yeah, I get what you were doing. And he said, yeah, you know what? I was getting tired. I was fatigued. I was a
Yeah.
little stressed. I couldn't see the big picture. I get it
Yeah.
now. So, but yeah, having faith and trust in those people that are, because we didn't have a lot of people qualified. Everybody got exposure. We had
Yep.
leads, and we had to rely on those leads to do their job and trust them. So yeah, talk about trust in the fire service. There's the one of the core functions we do, high angle rescue.
It's everywhere. It's trust in the gear, trust in the training, trust in the methods, trust in people's capabilities. You know, we're both island agency, veterans, and when the tide goes out and you need to transport a patient on a boat, sometimes we have negative tides where the pitch of the dock ramp is significant. And I will say that it was because of my work with Doug Clark that I conceived of a lowering method for patients on the gurney that was simple, that became a standard within our agency. Every firefighter who moves patients to the dock for boat transport has to know how to lower the gurney on a munter hitch.
Okay.
Where we'll use a short prusik line, put it on a part of the gurney that's like a strong piece of frame, and the anchor knot is a bowline with a Yosemite finish. The line then goes to a prusik sling with a steel carabiner. A munter is thrown into that carabiner, and then the gurney is lowered, because our procedure used to be 3 or 4 firefighters would be at the bottom of the gurney on a narrow walk, all holding each other while we were walking the gurney down slope. And now we had the gurney on 11 mm line, and you're just paying the rope out.
Right.
And it just made it super easy. And we
It's safer.
saved, oh yeah, and back injuries. Nobody slipped, nobody fell, nobody got hurt. And it was rope rescue education that enabled that to happen.
Awesome.
Yeah, pretty
Awesome
cool.
stuff.
So we have some interesting things to talk about today. You had in your kind of reintroduction to your agency as a thought leader and a coach and a mentor, you were brought back to a burn. How was that? A training burn?
Yeah. So this was actually this was the second one I've gotten to do with this department. It was excellent, most excellent. I look at it. I described it as my payday.
Yeah, man.
I'm doing roughly 2 days a month, 2 nights a month, sometimes 3, with the officer development training that we're doing, which is it's been going really well. Some really positive feedback. We've seen some of the fruits of that labor already in some of the audio and helmet cam of some of the incidents they've run. We're seeing significant progress, and conversations within the cadre at the station between the officers and firefighters, opening up to new ideas and such. So yeah, some really positive stuff going on there. So to me, it was like, hey, do you want to come play again? And I was like, well, yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah.
Whatever you need me to do. And man, what a great group of people. They treat me like a VIP. I show up. They don't expect me to do anything. In fact, when I start helping set up, or don't go over here, go talk to this person, go work with that guy. Go work with these people.
That's
Go walk around in
beautiful.
town. We got this. We'll put up. And then the same in the cleanup, it was the same type of thing. No, we'll pick up the line. You don't have to pick up and clean hose or any of that. So I looked at it as that's my paycheck because they're not paying me to go in. I was in about three about 3.5 hours last night working with one of their volunteer officers, and really, again, another productive night. And I'm doing that because I enjoy doing it, because I want to pay forward what I have in my that little bit of information that's hidden and stuck up there. I try to, get it out for them.
God bless you, brother.
So,
God bless you. That's
so
so
yeah, that was my
beautiful.
payday. And honestly, it's the fire stuff's cool, and I don't think I'm teaching them anything they don't already maybe know on the fire ground as far as how to put out fire or build fires and no training, but little tidbits here and there. But it just feels good to be back in the brotherhood.
Yeah.
To be
Yeah. I
back in
miss it too.
and I use that term. I use this, maybe overusing it lately, but it's a tribe. It's tribalism at its core. Being back with people with like mind, like values, like focuses. So
Especially in high stakes environments. What's interesting is that um, when circumstances can be life or death,
sure.
all of a sudden the things that are really true emerge in a collective way.
Oh, for
Um,
sure.
there doesn't seem to be a lot of let's say difference, or I'll be so bold as to say diversity in certain conditions
Oh,
when the
yeah.
stakes are really high. And
I don't know if we've talked about it, but I've seen that when I went back east and visited the department I used to be in when I was in the high school teenage years, and the same thing. They bicker. They get at each other, and you go in the station and they're talking behind each other's backs. They're cutting down. Oh, he doesn't know, but then they get a working fire. And boy, for the next 2 weeks, everybody gets along, everybody's on cloud nine,
isn't it
everybody's their
interesting?
best friend. Because again, we went into that environment of duress, and we came together in really harsh, really tough conditions for a common goal. And all of a sudden we're all facing the same direction again. We're all working to the same thing again. And then we go a period without any calls, without that adversity, and that those feelings start to erode. They start to perish. And now we're back to we have all this pent up energy, and where does it go? Well, it starts being pointed at each other.
Yeah. And I
And
wonder if it's because, Matt, the principles that, let's say, allow all of us to look downfield at the goalpost the same way, those true principles, that they're not active and living in the culture when there isn't a fire, as opposed to what comes naturally during a high stakes or high risk set of conditions might not come naturally in less than those conditions.
for
So
sure,
it really takes leadership to keep those principles
there you
active
go.
in the culture.
Yep, and
And
that's it right there. You just hit out of the park, and that it takes a strong leader that's cognitive, seeing what's happening,
yeah,
and able to describe how, when we're in that, what would we call it, in the downtime maybe between calls, especially in agencies that aren't busy. If you're in a city agency and you're on a crew and you're running 2 or 3 calls a day that are significant risk, that's different. But when you're in a volunteer organization that might see one house fire a month, if you're lucky, or less,
right, right.
all of a sudden now you have these large periods of downtime. You, as a leader, have to capture that, recognize it, capture it, and then find ways to focus your team, your crew, your tribe in the right direction. Because if you don't, they're going to find their own direction. And a lot of times there's other members in that agency that become casualties because they get in the line of fire accidentally. So you have to develop a robust training program.
Yes.
You have to lead with the why. Why is it important that we're training on this? How does it correlate to when we get to the big call? And you have to constantly always be pointing that what you're doing back to why we're here and how it relates to our job when we're in that high risk environment.
It's dangerous too when those two domains are so different.
Sure.
If there isn't strong leadership to bring the day-to-day culture in alignment with the principles that are living and active during high-risk operations. I I'll I'll provide an example from a different domain, but of the same principle. So in psychiatric emergency response, that is organized programming where people who are particularly skilled at their use of words and leveraging attributes of relationship to help someone who is presenting violent behavior to self-regulate.
Mm-hmm.
And that's in the service of reducing, let's say, high risk containment procedures like seclusion, manual restraint, applying mechanical restraint to someone. We want to use words to reduce the risk of those procedures because people get hurt an awful lot. And what's interesting is I came up some years ago with an example that I used in meetings to describe why the fire service, when they show up at a structure fire, why they do not follow the instructions of the homeowner. In other words, imagine the first in engine stepping out of the apparatus and then reporting to the homeowner to then get operational instructions on how to suppress the fire. And the homeowner says, don't pull your 1 3/4, don't establish water supply. I want you to use my 1/2-inch garden hose.
Yeah.
I want these assets deployed on Alpha side, Bravo side, and this is how I want you to attack the fire. We don't do it that way. So what's interesting is that in a hospital setting, when a response team is called to emergencies, we're there to put the fire out the way that we have been trained and put the fire out. But that can create political noise because there are other people working in the environment where the emergency erupted. So there are, in the healthcare setting, physicians, nurses. And let's say they have an opinion of how this incident is to be resolved. And then they want to interfere with how the response team does its job in managing the incident the way it's been trained. So now the team that comes to stage the use of seclusion restraint at the end of everything else after they've been exhausted so that they can avoid the use of those procedures takes time to do that. When people become impatient and then exercise their authority to alter how that's done, that creates risk.
Oh, yeah.
So I can't tell you in that domain how often people who are trained and very skilled at resolving a situation a certain kind of way has to adapt and work within a climate where political forces and hierarchy forces begin to influence practice in a not good way. Like imagine someone not knowing really anything about rope rescue showing up and providing instruction based on their position of authority to the technical expression of what was happening in the rigging. Sure. I don't like where that high directional is. I don't like where that change direction is. Why are you anchored here? I don't like that. But they really have no basis to make those determinations. And the person who's running the incident's like, what are you doing? You're creating risk. You're creating problems. I think this phenomenon is showing up.
Yeah, I've seen it on the fire ground. I've seen it in fire training too. You know, that's usually typically with in my experience, it's an officer that doesn't know their job. They don't understand basic fire ground tactics. They have you go in they have you go in the door closest to where they perceive the fire to be rather than through the entry that the homeowner uses on a regular daily basis, which that's the path we want to follow is the homeowner's path, because that's, if it's an occupied structure, typically where we might find them. Plus, there's no resistance there. When you have to move flower pots to get access to the doorway, obviously that's not a doorway that's used a lot. And sure enough, there was, stuff on the other side. Or in fire training, when we're trying to train to a specific tactic so that if we want to employ that tactic later on an actual emergency, by training it, we've lowered the risk of using that tactic.
Yep. Yep.
So they perceive that as, well, that's dangerous. That's too dangerous. Let's not do that. So now we're not going to train it at all. And we take it off the books. We can't even employ it later on, even though that tactic is more efficient, works better, and has a higher return. And we can safely train on it.
And that's the phenomena. What's interesting is that if that person were not in a position of authority and they were merely part of the crew and the expert was organizing the technique or the method, they would see the merit of it in a completely different way, because their feedback on that observation was not based on the data or the actuality of its performance, but it was based on some other reason. Yeah.
Narcissism. It's
Yeah.
that's what it was. It's purely, I'm in power and I'm threatened by your knowledge base. So therefore I'm going to shut that down.
But it's not his life that's at risk. Like, that's the interesting thing. Like, if
Right.
that person had to wear the risk responsibility themselves of playing around with that idea, they might not be so free to make a determination.
Yeah, and I think some of it goes back to, and we've mentioned before, I probably overutilize it as the risk avoidance term, because I think a lot, especially when you look at like a volunteer fire agencies, when you look at the political bodies, and even you have to realize a lot of these fire chiefs, career and volunteer, at that level become politicians. They're no longer necessarily a active on the fire ground leader. So they become a political person. And when they do that, they also fall into that risk avoidance. That's just the easy route. That's the easy tendency.
Yeah.
Let's go risk avoidance.
And sometimes it's not even, they're not avoiding risk, they're creating it. It's like perceived risk avoidance. We don't even know if it's real risk that's being avoided.
Exactly. See it all the time.
Yeah.
So
what do we do about it?
Well, so the agency I was with, I've been working. So one night a week, I get with some of my former crew members, getting my tribe on, So,
yeah.
So we meet at the city's training tower. It's a 4-story tower. I think I've posted a picture of it once before, and we do stair climbs. And I have different formats that I go up the stairs, left leg first, every other. I hop the stairs, and I have a sequence. It's about 20 cycles. So we show up there. Part of it is to help with some of the people's activity level, help with all of our activity level. But a lot of it is the social aspect, the tribal aspect of just getting together, sharing stuff.
Yeah.
I learn stuff from them. They teach me, and hopefully they're learning from me as I teach them. One of the things that they brought up, and it was funny, and we were talking about this a little in the green room. They were a little frustrated because their perception right now in that organization is that they're not focused on fire training. They're doing very little to no fire training. And I'm not there. I can't say that that's a fact. Just what they're telling me, their perception is all the focus is on EMS training. So now we look at this risk management way of doing business. It makes sense. Why would you do fire training? The majority of their calls, 80+%, are medical EMS calls. On an EMS call, they have the local hospital EMS department oversight. They have med control oversight. They have Department of Health for the state oversight. They have ongoing continuing education on EMS skills.
Oversight.
Now let's go to the fire side.
None.
Zero oversight.
Yeah.
Zero continuing education credit requirements. Zero oversight. Nobody's checking on them. So if I'm running that organization and I have a limited training time, limited training budget, I'm fearful of litigation, I can see where it's easy to fall into that pattern of let's focus all our effort, all of our eggs into the EMS training basket, because that's really what we're doing most of the time anyways. It's easy. There's lots of EMS format training out there. It's prepackaged, ready to go and ready to deliver. Where fire training is all over the place.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a big world, and if you don't have
What's
a
astonishing to me though is that the delivery of EMS services are far less risk of life or death to the responder than the fire side.
well, and that's circle back to what you were just saying to start this off was, yeah, they are, except for when we are dealing with people that might be in a mental health crisis. That's
Right.
when that's where the risk comes to the fire. And I can guarantee you right now, that's not what they're focused on. They're not
Yep.
training that.
They don't even want it in many cases. I'm in those discussions at the legislative
They don't
level,
want to
and
talk about it because
no,
it's an area that they don't understand, they don't comprehend, they don't know how to deal with it. So it's better to just ignore it.
yep. And
But
there are agencies that are, and there's risk everywhere.
sure,
There's risk, I mean, Gordon Graham said it best. If you don't have the experience of um of doing the thing, whatever it is,
right, low frequency,
right, high risk, low frequency.
yeah,
If you don't have the experience, you better make sure your training is as good as possible for that low frequency event
right.
when it shows up, because it's going to, and it's
Well,
going to be high
and
risk.
that's the misconception, is that that training has to be an actual. We have to do an actual exercise. No, you know what? I one of the things I talk a lot about in the training that I'm doing is recognition prime decision making.
Yeah, that's all
Dr.
Gordon
Klein
stuff.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's all in that arena. And they were able to prove that synthetic experience is not quite as good, but they do satisfy that experience niche, so that when we are faced in that dire high risk situation, we at least have something to go back on. Even if it was just Andy and I talking about Andy sharing a story about a patient he had to deal with and how to de-escalate, and he explains it all to me. Now I have a synthetic experience that I can go back to, and I can use those tools when I'm in a similar situation. That's
Matt,
what
what
training can be about.
Matt, what's the name of the POW who was a colonel, um, who practiced a game of golf every day mentally
Oh, in his
during,
head. Oh, that was
and
the
then and then when he came back, he shot the greatest game of golf in his
I
life.
don't remember. Wasn't did they use part of that for the Bat 21 script? Was that part of that
I don't
story?
know. I don't know if that
I don't
movie
remember.
had, but I'm ashamed that I don't recall this. There was a time I used to talk about it with some frequency. The principles you just described were principles that Chris Karachi, who was one of the formative members of SEAL Team 6, used to talk about all the time.
Mhm.
We worked together. I did some administrative and training coordination for him back in the day. And he used to talk about that principle all the time. That that synthetic, what you just described as synthetic training experiences, mean something, and you better be
Sure.
damn good at those things
Yeah, I
for
learned
when
that
the
in
real
middle
stuff
school.
happens. Yeah,
I had a gym teacher, a phys ed teacher, and a track coach in middle school, and he
yeah,
talked a lot about that. How and he was right. And he'd show us VHS clips back then.
yeah,
He would show
yeah.
us clips of Olympic level athletes, like high jumpers, and you watch them. They'd be there in their warm ups and their pre activity, and they'd have their eyes closed, and you could see them going through the motions, physical motions of their body movements while they're doing, say, the high jump.
Yep.
And that's what they're doing. They're going through that step by step. And
Yes.
you watch major athletes, and you'll still see that kind of stuff today. It's no
Absolutely.
different than us driving down the street and looking at a building and saying, if that was on fire right now, my dashboard would sound like this. And in our head, mentally playing what we would say in that situation. Where would my first line go? Where would this go? Well, we've had it. If somebody is over a bluff, how's that going to look? If I can't get this agency, then who am I going to call? How is that? I have this resource available. Pre-planning is part of that. That all builds those synthetic experiences.
It does. When I was passionate about rope rescue, I remember looking at anything. It could be a building, a house,
Mm-hmm.
a bridge, and oh, if I had to rescue someone there, where would I set up my rigging? How would I do this? And I'd go through the mental operations of creating that rigging. And interestingly, that takes discipline to and if you're excited about it or passionate about it, it's even better. But it takes discipline to want to do that all the time. And there are a number of skill sets that, to some extent, it could be argued that require that level of attention because we don't always have the dedicated training time to perform every feature of some of our craft in a 4-hour
Well,
drill period or a 2-hour
right.
drill
And
period.
some of them are just, I mean, it's just not efficient. I mean, I can't burn
Right.
a house down 10 times in a day and provide command officer training.
Right.
Now, they do have a house that we're going to burn, and it's not going to provide much firefighting training. So we're looking at maybe using that in a context of command officer and company officer training.
Yep.
But yeah, it's hard to synthesize some things. Well, it's hard to provide that high risk training in a controlled environment. So
Yeah.
synthesizing it becomes the only way you have.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that we're talking about these principles as a product of direct experience. And when we go into the, let's say, the non-training domain of the fire service, what's interesting is that the forces, the politics, the phenomena that occur in that area actually can influence what the hell we know to be true in high-risk operations.
Sure.
Like we've just been talking about. And all of this has continuity. All these, I mean, we've been skipping from rock to rock, but the common thread through all of this, I think, is that I guess the way for me to say it is there's truth, and then there's the forces that influence the perception of truth. And nobody seems to question what the truth is when their life is at stake. Everybody seems to have a very visceral understanding very often of what the truth is in the moment, whatever that might be. And in any condition less than that, when people don't have that experience, the truth suddenly becomes more relative until they go through the baptism of that experience and they're like, oh no, I want a bowline. I want a fixed loop on the end of a rope. I don't want some temporary anchor knot to be the thing my life hangs on. I want it to be that thing. I am going to only tie this knot a certain way because I remember it under pressure. I'm not going to experiment with 11 other ways to tie it. I'm going to tie it this one way. And, or whatever the case might be. I mean, there are probably 100 examples of that, but
no, it's yeah, I'm I'm chewing around on that one. And it is, so we're basically saying people with limited experience.
Yep.
Because our experiences really are what we use. Real experience.
Yep.
Is what we use to form.
Yep.
Perhaps our ideology.
Yep.
On how we're going to address future events.
Yep. And then people with limited experience actually influence. They try to influence what we have accepted by virtue of sacrifice and cost to be true. And in many cases, they succeed.
Sure. Well, especially if they're through tenure have achieved a position of authority over that organization. I mean, that's what I was dealing with for 17 plus years. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. And deal with today, even today. I mean, it takes a very confident, secure leader to allow the new generation, the younger people under them, to really control that organization.
You know, Matt, this inspires me to talk about something that we're observing in, let's call it the care and services, the human services domain right now. We're seeing more than ever the inclusion of people with lived experience in operations of human services. So if it's healthcare, people who are justice impacted helping others who are getting out of a system of incarceration and they need housing, jobs, etc. We're using more and more people with lived experience to perform these valuable services because the work gets done, frankly, more efficiently and with better outcomes. Guess what the barriers to that cohort is right now? The barriers are the work is easy. They can't move vertically in an organization because they don't have the measures that people in leadership generally acquire to move vertically in leadership. So a person with lived experience very often does not have a graduate degree. They may pop up. We've had this conversation.
We talked about this in Jumpstart the other day. We started on this, the lived experience topic. And
they pop hot in a background check. They can't get a promotion. And so they get discouraged. You tell me you want me here for my lived experience, but you can't let me move in the organization.
Yeah, when I moved out here, because of the time frame when I started in the fire service and where I came from, certifications weren't really a thing. You got a little, homemade printed dot matrix printer certification that you completed so-and-so county's fire academy of however many hours. But all of our experience, all of our real training came through the senior guys on the crews
taking the time.
Doing that sort of stuff. And I moved out here and everybody's IFSAC firefighter 1, firefighter 2.
Yep.
Where's all your certs? And I'm like, I never believed in them. I'm like, I'm fine. I'm teaching you guys how to do this stuff, and I don't have. But over time,
we went and got those things.
I had to because the system forced it, even to the point where eventually I got passed up for a career training officer's position in another agency on the island because I was the one applicant that didn't have an associate's in fire. So I went out and got one. Because it wasn't because I was taking a knee to the system as much as
you wanted to play. So you got to go get the union card.
I wanted to play, but on top of that, I wanted them to prove. I think I wanted to prove to them.
Oh, I could do this.
Well, this is easy. I was working a 40+ hour a week job and doing fire command for the volunteers every 3 to 4 weeks and running a fire station. And I had 2 young children at home and I had I had all this stuff, and I can do this associate's degree and graduate with a 4.0. So there, are you happy now? And you know what? Still weren't happy.
You know what I remember at a fire training, fire instructor or fire instructor 1, fire training instructor.
Yeah, I remember going, how will I ever forget that?
Yeah, right. Well, that's where we met. Here's what I remember. Is everybody comfortable with the temperature? Is the lighting good?
Do you know where the restrooms are? If there's an emergency, the exits are, that was their focus. But how many people do you know will show up with, I'm a fire instructor 1. Okay, teach me how to don an SCBA. Can't do it.
I'm going to, without naming, I'm going to say that I know a commissioner who leveraged that credential in their position as a commissioner. Sure. And they had absolutely no fire training experience whatsoever because that was the only credential offered by IFSAC that had no prerequisites.
Yep.
None.
Yeah.
You could just walk into the class. And that's not a dig at IFSAC. I'm not criticizing their structure.
No.
I'm simply saying that the idea that credential sufficiently prepared anybody for anything in being a meaningful provider of education to others in fire service, that proposition is not supported by the data.
I think it's like any system like that. It becomes perverse over time.
It probably started much different. Yeah, I would agree with that.
When I was in the military, in the aviation community, we had, they call them EAWS, Enlisted Air Warfare Specialist. And it was, when I first started the process, it was a difficult, arduous journey. You had to do a workbook. You had to learn just a broad plethora of detailed information. And then you had to sit in front of a board. And typically those boards could last from 2 to 4 hours easily.
Right.
They would actually drill you if you were doing well. They would drill you until you got something wrong
Huh.
purposefully. I mean, it was a real,
Demanding. Yeah.
very demanding, real nut up time. So when I got out of the military at that point, they had made that a mandatory for promotion. And as soon as they did that, every command had classes springing up, and the classes were really teaching you how to pass the test. The 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 sit down interview portion became a checkbox item, because for a command they wanted promotions and retention because that's how they were graded. And if you had to have this, it became a widget, a counted widget. We're gonna make sure everybody in my command has EAWS wings. When you look at IFSAC certification, I see the same thing. I was a what do they call them? Evaluator. I was an evaluator for the state,
Yeah.
and I have not been invited back to evaluate in some time,
Yeah.
because I'm not an easy evaluator. I'm not unfair by any means,
Yeah.
but I think I passed. The last evaluation I did was driver pump operator, and I think I passed 2 of the maybe 18 candidates that went through my
Jeez.
station. And it was a pretty simple station. It was it had to do with charging a line, a pre-connected line, and it said the candidate shall be able to demonstrate the pump discharge pressure and why. And I asked them simple questions like, what's your pump discharge pressure? Oh, 155. Why? Because that's what the preset is. No. Why is it 155? How long's your pre-connect? I don't know. I think 150. What
Calculate the
nozzle do
friction
you
loss. Yeah.
what nozzle do you have on the end of it? I don't know. This isn't my engine. I'm like,
Oh,
how can I pass you based on those parameters? But I think the system, and I don't want to say it's because I don't think it is the
dude,
fault of
that's
any
exactly why you
person.
didn't come back, because they're
Oh, I'm
looking
sure
at, we need to get people to
through
be
the
able to
system, we need to
operate
get
pump.
through it,
Yeah.
because
You
and
would
that's
be a
what they're
great
doing.
music teacher.
Well,
You
but
would
that's what
be,
they do. They just pump people through it. The senior evaluators and all these other people that are involved in the testing that set it up, it costs them a lot in time and energy to set the testing up. So they don't want to do retests.
and that's real. No one's saying here that that isn't real, but the whole thing
Right.
at its foundation is is problematic.
It is
If
problematic because we're setting these people up and they're getting these certifications, but then they aren't actually able to do the work that the certification certifies them to do.
Matt, there are people who go to Berkeley School of Music and come out with a lot more information and knowledge about music than they ever had going in, granted. But they can't seem to get a gig or play in a way that they feel good about or that helps them in their career. My dad used to get, because he was a world-class jazz guitar teacher, he used to get so many people who went to music school who finally came to him to learn how to play. He was the lived experience guy. He
Right.
was the guy who played with all of those heavies, went on the road with all of those gigs, um, spent his own money and time studying with certain masters. He did not go to Juilliard. He did not go to Berkeley. And I can't tell you how many people who went to music school came to him to learn how to really improvise and play after they had gone to school.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I think you just kind of unlocked something for me. The last, I think, 3 years I was with the department. My buddy Ed and I were running most of the academies, at least administratively, and some hands-on. The later it went, the less hands-on, because I was trying to build a succession plan where other people could run the academies.
Mm-hmm.
But we were still managing them and administering them. what we started doing for the Firefighter One Academy was we stopped doing classroom instruction. We gave
Bold.
them, yeah, we gave them the book and we said, look, here, it's real simple. If you read the book and then you read the book again, and then you read the book again, you'll pass the test. Every single test question, the answer is in the book.
Yep.
But if you want me to stand up in front of the room and lecture you for 2 hours on the chapter on forcible entry, I will do that. But I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not going to hit all the test questions because I don't know them all necessarily. So there's no way. I'm probably going to teach you from experience what I think is important, but it's not going to necessarily be what's on the test. So you're at the end, it's more efficient for you to just read the book, read the book, read the book. Plus you can do it on your time.
Yep.
Some people, it fit their schedule to read in the morning for a couple hours. Other people
Brilliant.
late at night. So
Absolutely
you read the book
brilliant.
on your time. We were doing quizzes through the, I think Resource One online.
Yeah.
Which was a phenomenal tool. And it did all the quizzes, tracked their scores, did everything, kept everybody on track. That worked well. And then on the nights that we actually had academy
skills,
we were all skills. We were teaching skills based on the skill sheets, but we weren't teaching the skill sheets because we told them you're responsible for knowing what's on the skill sheet. If you have a question about something on a skill sheet, you need to come to us. We were trying to teach world experience. We were teaching lived experience. We were teaching what they needed to know so that when they graduated the academy, they could show up at the fire station and immediately go to work. Immediately.
Matt, what's interesting about what you did too is that you placed the burden of responsibility on the student. Do you want this? You have to read the book.
Right.
You have to know what's on the skill sheet, not me. My job is to provide you meaningful, the meaningful conferral of information that you demonstrate the competency under my observation. And I can say, that's done to standard. That will save someone's life or your own. That's my function. Your function is to read the damn book and know what the hell is on the skill sheet. Yeah, we're training to the skill sheet, but the idea here is if you can pass what I want to show you, this skill sheet's going to be easy. If you read the book, the quiz and the test will be easy.
You want to guess what our success rate was?
I'm sure it was very, very high on that format.
100% of the people that completed the academy passed and got their Firefighter One.
That's unheard of, generally speaking. Nobody does that.
Now, granted, I say 100%, 100% of the people that completed the academy. We did have a number of people that just they would have dropped anyhow, either because of time commitments, but mostly it was physical. We had a number of people that were in volunteer agencies. We will take people that are at a higher age. So that they were getting hurt. We had people get hurt and couldn't finish and such, but of the people that actually completed the academy that actually stuck through till the end, we ended up with 100% completion and success rate, pass rate of Firefighter One in those 3 years. And we were doing it for I think the last academy, I think we were pumping them out at about $250 a student. And that included a pair of sweats, department sweatpants, t-shirt issue, because we wanted them and we were giving them. That was another thing was when I first started was books. They were shared books. I'm like, no, if I want you to really take the class serious, I want you to keep the book.
Yeah.
I understand the IFSAC manuals are expensive, but why wouldn't I give? I mean, I need to show some commitment on my side as an agency. So we were giving them the book. This is yours. Write in it, highlight it. I don't care. Draw pictures of wieners in it. I don't care. It's your book. Sorry.
It's okay.
Boys will be boys.
Well, brother, I don't know what we solved today, but I think we got into some meaningful conversation, and
I hope so.
I hope that our listeners are deriving some meaning and value out of this level of talk. And I think that the more that we can appeal to our communities and our leaders, that when we know that in high stakes situations, certain things work. When we know under high risk conditions, certain things work. Can we have a meaningful discussion where people with lived experience are at the table discussing with leadership any changes that are being contemplated. We're not here to say, no change, don't change anything. What we're here to say is, please have us to the table. And
Right.
and if you want us to entertain change initiatives, would you kindly include us in the discussion? And please listen to us when we offer feedback about why something may or may not work. And then you'll have an opportunity to explain perhaps why we need to go in this direction. What are the other reasons that are driving it? And then maybe I'll get to say in return, well, I can appreciate that problem. Can we find some kind of a compromise
Right.
in
Well,
this where we don't, I mean, can we be in those discussions? I think that's a great first step, because I don't think we are. I think
I think one of for me, a lot of my tenure, my experience was I had to learn tact, and I had to learn emotional control, because the bull in the china closet,
doesn't
passive
work.
aggressive,
Yep.
I'm never going to get invited to the table. I'm
No.
never going to get the platform that I need, because that in of itself, it puts people in the defensive mode immediately. It's counterproductive. So we need to be mature. We need to understand that coming to that table, getting that seat is an earned experience.
Yeah.
We have to be mature about it. We have to be tactful about it. We have to be non-emotional. You have to detach yourself emotionally from these issues, because if you
Yeah.
don't, it just shuts it down.
Yeah. And some interesting one-liners that I've heard over the years that have helped me. Let's say you really know the truth. You're the guy with lived experience in the room, and you really know the truth, and you hear a lot of non-truth getting talked about. Add to what you just said, don't be the smartest guy in the room.
No.
Like, don't act and look like the smartest guy in the room, because you won't be invited back, because your very presence is already stripping people who don't know the truth of their dignity. And the moment you open your mouth and speak with authority and directness, if you're abrasive in how you do it, yep. Or if you say, that's dumb, that's going to get somebody killed. If you say that in a meeting with leadership, they're going to go like this. Thank you for that contribution, and you'll never be invited back. And then you'll be pissed down in the truck bay about why no one listens to you.
Or they'll invite you back just so that they can bully you, shut you down, push you into the corner further, and frustrate you. Yeah.
There's that too. So
well,
with that, brother.
I wasn't that guy.
Yeah.
So, hey, before we go, I just do want to shout out. We burned the house. We had an awesome time. Burning the house was just being with like people. It was a great training burn. We got a lot of good training out of it. I was very fortunate. My friend Ed, his son came up. Ed's son works in Clark County for Clark County Fire Department, which is awesome. So that was, and he brought up his new, he called him his station rookie, but he just got off probation the week before. So James and Giovanni from Clark County, awesome. Here's your shout out. And then a couple of firefighters from Las Vegas Fire Department were also up. Katie and Eli. Eli and I were, I think, kindred spirits there.
Here.
We got into the reloading and guns and some other stuff, but great to share. It was really, I asked you about the rope rescue, if that was a combination training. And what I have found in my life experience, sometimes as volunteers, we don't want to put ourselves out into that arena of combined or outside the house training, because we're intimidated that the career firefighters will outperform us and maybe look down upon us. I got to tell you, that can be anything but the truth. At the station tour, went on a
Matt,
station tour.
These are all career guys behind me in this picture.
And they didn't see you any different, and you didn't see them any different.
Well,
you all put your pants on one leg at a time, didn't you?
If they did see me different, they didn't make that an issue. And I felt part of the cadre.
Yeah. So I got the tour Station 17 in Clark County, which is James's house. And the people there, the firefighters, were amazing. Chuck, thank you, Chuck, if you watch. Chuck took the truck out. Didn't know I had experience, so gave me the full public relations spin on how the ladder truck works. Even asked if I wanted to climb it. And when I told him I've done it multiple times, I wasn't interested. That's when he caught on that James set him up and didn't tell him of my past experience. So he felt like a bit of a
Yeah.
fool at the
Why,
moment.
why
But
did you just make me go through all this? Yeah.
yeah, but anyways, they were great. I appreciate it. Thank you to Clark County for making me feel like someone special down there at the firehouse at 17. You guys were awesome.
Here, here.
And thanks for those guys coming up and sharing their experience and their knowledge, and at the same time taking what we had to offer. The guys down in Clark County asked me when I was going to come down there and teach, and I laughed at them and said, well, I'd come down here to learn, not to teach. But yeah, there is no, we're all doing the same job. We're all taking the same risk. It's just maybe the different environment, maybe the different amount of frequency that we do it. And my experience has always been that volunteers, when you get in the right group, if you're doing it for the right reasons, the career people, a lot of them will actually look at you with a little bit higher level of respect, because they understand, especially the ones that cut their teeth in a volunteer department.
Oh, yeah.
They know your life balance, how much more you're giving maybe to get there to do what they're doing.
You want to be there. You're not there at $100,000 a year. You're there because you want to be there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it was a great time after the burn. We came to my house, and that was where we did the tribe side, and just a bunch of people breaking bread, having a few adult beverages, and sharing stories, sharing jokes, sharing gags, sharing life. And it was awesome. My boys from 2-6, where I used to work.
Yeah.
They were there. Josh, Dylan.
That's the black
Dave.
sheep, right?
That was the black sheep, 26 engine. And I had a nice surprise for them. One of my boys that I trained went down to West Pierce, down in the Lacey area. I picked up a career job down there.
Great.
5 years ago, and getting ready to go to medic school this summer. So Frenchie, thanks for coming up for the weekend, and good luck in medic school, buddy.
Yeah. Good luck. Good luck.
Good stuff.
West Pierce is a good agency.
Yeah. He's really happy there. He's doing really well. So
good. Well,
that's it.
Folks,
I got my checklist done, Andy. Thanks.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, folks, thank you so much for listening. You can follow Nozzle Reaction on Instagram. We also have a YouTube channel, and Matt and I will continue to do this, and we look forward to having some guests in the near future. Matt, our email address is?
We have an email?
That's what I thought. Don't we have?
Yeah, nozzlereactionpc@gmail.com.
Nozzlereactionpc@gmail.com.
Or just the comments on the YouTube will work.
Comments, feedback. If you want to be able to call in at some point and talk to us, we'd love to have you. Thank you so much for your time and your attention. All the very best to you. Stay safe out there. Risk a lot, save a lot.